Inside you, right this second, is one of the most complex biological systems in the known universe, second only to the human brain. And it's basically an army. We're talking soldiers, intelligence officers, heavy weapons, all fighting a constant invisible war just to keep you alive. So today we're going to follow the story of what happens when that army faces a sudden, brutal invasion. Okay, so picture this. You're just going about your day and then, bam, the world just explodes. A giant asteroid rips through the sky and millions of alien life forms pour in, ready to just destroy everything. Sounds like some crazy sci-fi movie, right? Well, for the trillions of cells that make up your body, this isn't fiction. This is pretty much what it feels like when you get a simple cut.
All right, so here's where our story kicks off. It all starts with something you would barely even notice. Maybe you get a little scratch from a dirty twig while you're walking in the park. But on a microscopic level, this is not a minor inconvenience. No way. This is the start of an all-out war.
Yeah, for you, it's nothing. A tiny drop of blood, a fleeting moment of ouch, and then you forget about it. But for your cells, oh, it's a completely different story. A gaping chasm has just been torn open in their world, a massive breach in the wall, and the invasion has begun. The wound is an absolute disaster zone. You've got dead and dying cells everywhere, blood is flooding the area, and worst of all the bacteria that were hanging out on that twig are now pouring into the warm, nutrient-rich paradise of your body, and their only goal? Multiply. They're going to do it exponentially, and they'll overwhelm your entire system if they're not stopped, and fast. But your body doesn't just sit there and take it. Nope. Instantly, the first stage of your defense system kicks into high gear. This is your innate immune system. Think of them as the rapid response team, the first responders. They're not picky, they just attack any invader they see.
So the very first thing that happens is that the cells that were damaged by the cut, well, they start screaming for help. They release this flood of chemical alarm signals, a massive distress call that echoes throughout your body, waking up the very first soldiers of your immune army.
And who answers that call first? Meet the macrophage. To give you a sense of scale, if your regular cells were the size of a person, this guy would be the size of a rhino. It's this big, powerful, stoic beast, and it is always the first to arrive at the scene of an invasion. And these things, they are absolutely brutal. A macrophage will stretch out these octopus-like arms, grab bacteria, and just swallow them whole, digesting them alive. It can devour up to 100 invaders before it even starts to get tired. But when the enemy numbers are just too great, it knows exactly what to do. Call for reinforcement.
So, if the macrophage is the big, tough, heavy infantry, the reinforcements they call in, they're the berserkers, the absolute maniacs of the immune system. These are the neutrophils, intense, suicidal warriors that live for one reason and one reason only, to kill. They're actually so aggressive that they self-destruct after just a few days, so they don't cause too much damage to your own body. And their tactics are just insane. Totally reckless. They literally vomit deadly chemicals onto bacteria and swallow them up. Yeah, they cause a ton of collateral damage, but they just don't care. And get this, some of them will even hit a self-destruct button, exploding to cast this wide, toxic net made of their own DNA to trap and kill even more enemies. It's pure chaos.
So all this insane microscopic warfare I'm talking about, you can actually see the signs of it on your own skin. As the battle rages, your blood vessels open up to let more of these soldier cells in. And that's what you experience as inflammation. That swelling, that redness, the heat around your cut, that is the physical sign of a massive war being fought on your behalf.
But, sometimes this first wave of shock troops, it's just not enough. If the bacteria are too tough or there are just too many of them, the first line of defense can get overwhelmed. And that means it's time to call in the special forces, the adaptive immune system. Unlike that first wave, this attack is highly specific, custom-built for this one particular enemy.
This whole next phase kicks off with a really special cell called the dendritic cell. See, this cell isn't a soldier, it's more like an intelligence officer. While the macrophages and neutrophils are out there fighting, the dendritic cell is on the battlefield collecting intel. Its mission is absolutely crucial. Find the perfect weapon to win this war.
And its process is just wild. It literally rips bacteria apart, wears pieces of them like trophies, and then it bolts from the battlefield. It travels along your immune system's highway to a lymph node, which is kind of like a military command center. And there it starts this massive search for one
very specific cell that can recognize the enemy parts it's carrying. And once it finds that perfect match and activates it, that's when your body's second line of defense awakens. Now, this response is a lot slower to get started, but man, it is unbelievably powerful and super specialized. This is where the ultimate weapons get deployed.
The cell that our dendritic cell was looking for is called a T helper cell. Think of it as the Army's field commander. As soon as the dendritic cell shows it the enemy parts and flips its on switch, the T helper cell's first job is to multiply. It just clones itself over and over, turning one single commander into thousands. This brand new army of commanders then splits into two groups. The first group heads all the way back to the battlefield. They find those exhausted macrophages who've been fighting for days, and they basically give them this chemical pep talk that just sends them into a killing frenzy all over again. The second group, they stay behind in the lymph node for another vital mission.
That mission is to find and activate another type of Special Forces soldier, the B cells. And B cells are basically mobile weapons factories. Their whole job, their entire reason for existing, is to crank out these little protein superweapons called antibodies. And the scale we're talking about here it's just mind-blowing. Once a single B cell is activated, it clones itself and starts churning out antibodies at an unbelievable rate. We're talking up to 2,000 antibodies every single second.
Okay, so with these antibody factories now running 24/7, we're entering the final act of the battle. The tide is about to turn in a huge way, and the consequences of this fight are going to last for a very, very long time.
But you gotta remember, this whole thing takes time. It's not instant. The invasion and that first response happen almost immediately. But it takes a few days for that dendritic cell to do its job, and for the T and B cells to get activated and multiply. The real heavy hitters, the antibodies, they don't even arrive on the scene until about a week later.
But when they do arrive, it's game over for the bacteria. Millions of these custom-made antibodies flood the battlefield. They latch onto the invaders, basically gluing them together, paralyzing them, and painting these giant "eat me" signs on them for the macrophages to easily find and destroy.
So after the war is won and the last enemy is gone, most of these immune cells actually self-destruct. They do it to save energy and resources, but not all of them. A few of the specialized T cells and B cells stick around. They become memory cells, and they'll patrol your body for years, sometimes for the rest of your life, making sure you are now immune to that specific bug.
And eventually you look down and notice that the cut has healed. You completely forget it ever happened, but you've just been the silent host of this desperate, week-long war for your own survival.